Hello friends, I am Jonathan Pishton with Apex Counseling. We are coming to you with our third video on how to have the best mental health possible during the COVID-19 crisis. So if you didn't see parts 1 and 2, basically we believe that it is possible for people to have reasonably good mental health even in these times that are objectively not as good as they were a couple of months ago. There's a lot of stuff you can do to positively impact how you're feeling, how your mental health is. It's harder than it was a little bit ago, but we do believe that people can overall have pretty decent mental health if they know some things to do to positively impact themselves. So our topic for this video is going to be the news, information, how it plays into your mental health, and how you can interact with it in a way that is not going to be destructive to your mental health. So let's talk about a problem that we all had before this all broke out and how it's gotten much worse so we can figure out how to solve it. The problem is people overconsume information. We spend an awful lot of time taking in news and information, completely disregarding the source. Now, without getting into a big thesis on that, here's the main problem. The thing that we do by not paying very close attention to what we take in and in what amounts is every single thing we see, every single thing our senses observe goes into our thought patterns. We have thoughts about it, which then generate our emotions. The trouble with that is that since we're not paying attention to what we're taking in, we're essentially setting ourselves up to have thought patterns about all sorts of things, none of which we're being intentional about. And the way that negatively impacts us is two ways. Number one, we are taking in non-actionable bad news. When we spend time taking in non-actionable bad news, it colors our perception of ourselves in relation to the world. And the way it colors our perception is that it makes it likely for us to feel helpless and powerless. When we are taking in news that we can do nothing with, do nothing about, the most reasonable place for us to go if we're going to allow our thoughts to stray negatively is to feel helpless and powerless. The second major problem is that we often, when we're consuming the news, but even pre-COVID-19, but now especially, we often wouldn't allow ourselves to notice the good. And that's partly news media's fault because they figured out that bad news gets more clicks. But part of it is that we as humans, we drift towards finding out about the negative stuff and dwelling and ruminating on the negative. And if we are going to have positive thoughts, if we're going to notice positive things within the world, we actually have to be much more intentional about it. In a lot of ways, we'll automatically notice the negative. For us to notice the positive requires a certain amount of effort on our part. Now, I want to be very clear about a thing that we're going to talk about before I get to the action items, before I get to how you can help yourself. It's going to be very easy to believe that I'm inviting people to be uninformed or to be delusional and focus only on happy, frilly, positive, and ignore negative or to hide from it. That's not the thing that I'm going to be proposing, but a lot of people easily believe that because it's so hard to intentionally do the things that I'm going to propose that you do. So if you're going to positively impact your mental health as it relates to the news, here are the things that I'm going to recommend that you do. Number one is focus on news that is actionable. And if we were to imagine actionable during the COVID-19 crisis, we would imagine things like consuming news related to here is ways you can stay safe. Look, this week we found out that if you do this, you have a much better chance of not getting infected. We found out that if you do this and you are infected, you have a much better chance of recovering. Or here's how you can go to the grocery store and have the most minimal chance of infection. Here's how you can make the best breathing mask. So These are types of news that are actionable. Death tolls 2,000 miles away from you are not really actionable. Even a few weeks ago, I mean, maybe there was some news that was actionable from other places because New York was kind of experiencing this thing. We saw what was happening there, and in our state, in West Virginia, they kind of got ahead of it and did some things quicker to keep from having as much impact, is my understanding of what occurred. That was actionable. But one of the things that's very easy for us to do is we'll get caught up in the news and we'll focus on all of this stuff that is completely non-actionable. Now, you'll notice I said this is hard. The reason this is difficult is because if you just tune in to one of the major news networks, they're not going to give you much that is actionable. They're just going to give you all the bad news with zero emphasis on how can you use that to positively impact your own life? How can you utilize this information to regain some control of what you're experiencing? So you actually do have to kind of look hard for what I'm proposing. So let's imagine a person spends an hour a day, which in my opinion is maybe a little too much, but we'll just say an hour a day consuming news related to the COVID-19 crisis. If a person is not being intentional, that entire hour is going to be devoted to things that are going to make them feel helpless and powerless. If they're really trying hard to find things that they can take action on, maybe 30 to 45 minutes of it they could find that is actionable. And that's if you're really good at it. I recognize that I'm proposing something difficult, but as a place to start, looking for news that is actionable, that you can utilize to either help yourself, keep your own self safe, to help someone else, to in some way impact the situation, even if it's at the micro level. Impacting at the micro level, far and away better for your mental health than having zero impact whatsoever. So there's bullet point number one, is make it actionable. And then bullet point number two is allowing yourself to see the whole picture. I actually had to go searching for this information because we're told every day what the infection rate is, what the death toll is. I actually had to go searching for what is the number of cases that have fully recovered. So I'm going to quote stuff I found from Johns Hopkins. Apparently they have some of the most up-to-date information. But by the time this video drops, I'm sure the information is going to be out of date. But as of the time I looked it up, here was the full info. 70,000 people or so had died from the virus worldwide. Now, that's the part that's easy to come by. That's the part, even me going there to find the full information, was the first thing I focused on. Remember what we said, brains easily focus on the negative. The other two things I was looking for were how many people have been infected, confirmed, and how many people recovered. Well, apparently at the time I looked this up, 1.3 million people were confirmed infected worldwide, with 270,000 cases recovered, fully recovered, tested positive. Now they don't have it. So if you look at the numbers, right now that's right at about 5 times, just shy of 5 times more people recovered than died. Now notice, I'm not saying that's good. That's still not a terrific ratio. But if we put it in the context of, well, okay, we have this very dangerous thing, but look and see that so many more people recover than die from it, that's a much more complete psychological picture. If we allow ourselves to see, oh, okay, this is not hopeless. It's very bad to get infected, it's very dangerous, but there's still plenty of chance that a person can recover. Psychologically, that's the much more full information, and it's much easier to not experience intense dread or anxiety over the fact that we might get infected. I mean, we still might, and you still should work very hard to keep yourself safe. But if you are focusing on the full psychological picture, it's much easier to have some hope that things can maybe work out okay. And as an illustration of how easy it is for our brains to go to the negative, let me point out that when I was looking this up, when I was trying to find the full information, the people researching this apparently, and I'm not going to remember the exact quote, exactly how this came about, but basically there was an admission of, oh, we kind of forgot to start tracking the recovered cases immediately. So even the people researching this, they were so focused on the negative, on the number of people sick, in serious condition, or dying, they completely forgot to start tracking people that recovered. So if that's going to happen to people who are intentionally researching this, of course that's going to happen to the rest of us. So we have to be extremely intentional about noticing the things that are good. And you know, not in a delusional way, but in a way that lets us balance, okay, yes, here's this bad stuff. Here is also good that is occurring. So plenty of people recovering, plenty of people getting this but being completely asymptomatic. Yes, this is a bad situation. This is objectively bad, but it is not as bad as our brains will attempt to make it if we don't allow ourselves to focus on, yeah, good things are happening too. And along with that, you know, this is a wonderful time to focus on, look at what human beings are doing for each other right now. I think it was Fred Rogers, Mr. Rogers, that said, anytime you find a bad situation, look for the helpers. You'll always find people helping. It's okay to, you know, look at that part of the positive too. Like, we have really come together trying to be helpful to each other. I mean, sure, there's plenty of outliers who aren't, but we have been really beautiful towards one another in a lot of ways, trying to get over this crisis together. It's okay to allow yourself to focus on that as part of that picture too. So if you're going to keep yourself as well as possible as it relates to consuming news, try your best to consume news that's actionable. Try your best to get the whole picture, not just the negative picture. And this is tough. You know, I had to go looking for it myself when I was looking for the complete picture of the rates, like we were talking about. So hopefully this video here is actionable to you. Hopefully this is helpful to you. You can use it to positively impact your mental health and stay as well as humanly possible during these really bizarre circumstances that we find ourselves in. Thank you so much for hanging out with me for a few minutes today. My name is Jonathan Pishon with Apex Counseling, and I will see you next time.